In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Humanity stretches across a galaxy of 10,000 worlds, bound together under the iron grip of the Imperium of Man. Here, life is cheap, and survival is measured not in freedom or happiness, but in usefulness. Every man, woman, and child is a cog in an eternal machine of blood, industry, and devotion. But among the countless horrors of the 41st millennium, one of the most horrifying truths remains hidden in plain sight. The Imperium does not merely harvest human labor, nor does it only conscript them to die on the battlefields of endless wars. In some of its darkest corners, humanity itself becomes sustenance. Food for the machine, food for the living, and sometimes even offerings to the Emperor. From the titanic Hive cities, choked with millions, to the cold, endless corridors of voidships that drift between stars, humans are reduced to nothing more than resources, tools for survival, ingredients in an unholy system of consumption. Every ration, every nutrient, every morsel consumed as a price, and sometimes that price is life itself. Today, we journey into the deepest, most unsettling layers of the Imperium. We will uncover how entire populations are systematically harvested, processed, and consumed. We will explore the horrifying mix of bureaucracy, faith, and practicality that drives Imperium to treat its own citizens as nothing more than food. Prepare yourself, for the truths we will reveal are not for the faint of heart. This is a story of hunger, control, and the ultimate dehumanization. This is how the Imperium uses humans as food. To understand how the Imperium can justify such horrors, we must first understand what the Imperium is and what it demands of its people. Spanning millions of worlds across the galaxy, the Imperium is not merely a government or an empire. It is a colossal, unfeeling machine, a system so vast and unrelenting that humanity is measured by its usefulness. Entire worlds exist solely to serve its needs, to produce weapons, to hide resources, or supply troops for its endless wars. Individual lives, personal freedom, happiness, even survival, hold no intrinsic value unless they serve the Imperium's purpose. The Imperium's obsession with control begins at birth. On industrial worlds, children are conscripted almost immediately, indoctrinated into obedience and duty, trained for labor or warfare. Hive cities, some housing hundreds of millions of souls, are not designed for comfort or safety. They are living factories, grinding their populations into productivity. Families are often torn apart. Natural bonds are replaced by strict hierarchies, quotas, and the unyielding rule of the adeptus administratum. In such environments, survival itself is a constant struggle. Hunger, disease, and accidents claim countless lives daily, yet the system endures. But survival alone is not enough. The Imperium thrives on absolute efficiency. Resources are precious, and the human population is seen as one of the galaxy's most versatile resources. Soldiers of the Astra Militarum, workers of the manufactorums, pilgrims of faith, but also, in the most horrifying instances, raw materials to sustain the living. Humanity is treated like any other commodity, measured, cataloged, rationed, and recycled. Every individual is a potential source of labor, energy, or sustenance. In some Hive cities and penal worlds, where overpopulation has reached critical levels, the Imperium does not simply let starvation claim the excess. It institutionalizes it, controlling every aspect of life and death. The bureaucracy of the Imperium is relentless. Administrators, scribes, and commissars track every individual with meticulous precision. Population quotas are issued, work efficiency monitored, and excess individuals are identified. On worlds where resources are scarce, or on void ships drifting through deep space for centuries, the Imperium solution is shocking in its cold logic. Humans can be consumed to preserve the rest of the population. Nutrient rations are supplemented with processed human meat. Children, prisoners, the sick, and the elderly can become part of the food supply. It is an abhorrent practicality, but in the eyes of imperial doctrine, it is no different from harvesting grain or livestock. This is not simply a rumor whispered by heretics or an exaggeration of imperial cruelty. Across the galaxy, the grimdark reality of human exploitation is documented in official records, codexes, and testimonies from the field. Penal worlds, such as Barab 8 or Necromunda, have operated under this logic for centuries. On some planets, death tides, sacrificial offerings of the living, are formalized, feeding both the physical and spiritual needs of the Imperium. Voidships, carrying millions of souls across interstellar distances, may recycle organic matter from the dead, turning human bodies into sustenance for long voyages. Faith and obedience compound this system. Humanity is indoctrinated to accept that their lives are ultimately not their own. The Emperor is not merely a leader. He is the ultimate authority, and every death or consumption is framed as service. Ritual, religion, and propaganda normalize what would otherwise be unthinkable. Children are taught from birth that their sacrifice, whether on the battlefield in labor or as sustenance, is a noble act. In this way, the Imperium enforces its control not through fear alone, but through a psychological framework that binds entire populations to compliance. It is this intersection of bureaucracy, faith, and sheer pragmatism that allows the Imperium to transform humanity into a resource. The process is systemic, industrialized, and horrifyingly efficient. Humans are counted, categorized, and ultimately consumed in a cycle that ensures the survival of the collective, while the individual becomes meaningless. It is the ultimate expression of the Imperium's values: efficiency, control, and survival at any cost. In essence, the Imperium does not view humans as people. They are workers, soldiers, subjects, and yes, food. This grim calculus of life and death defines entire worlds, entire voidships, and entire generations. To witness it is to understand the cold, mechanical heart of the Imperium, a heart that beats not with compassion, but with the relentless logic of survival, no matter how horrifying. As we move forward, we will explore the historical precedents, the mechanized processes, and the ritualistic practices that make human consumption not only possible, but, in some cases, normalized within the Imperium. The scale of this exploitation is staggering, and its reality more horrific than most can imagine. The Imperium of Man is vast and ancient, spanning tens of thousands of years of history. Over these millennia, countless practices have emerged, some horrifying in their pragmatism, others outright ritualistic in nature. The use of humans as food, whether as a tool for survival or an instrument of faith, has precedents scattered across the galaxy. To understand these practices, we must look to the worlds, the chronicles, and the stories that reveal the Imperium's darkest secrets. Hive worlds are often the first examples. Worlds such as Necromunda or Barab 8, where population density reaches unimaginable levels, cannot sustain their inhabitants with conventional food production alone. On these planets, starvation is not accidental. It is a system. Excess populations, often comprised of the poor, criminals, or those deemed unproductive, are culled in various ways. While direct references to consumption are rare in some official texts, surviving accounts from heretical chronicles, inquisitorial reports, and Black library novels hint at the use of human flesh as sustenance for others. This is not mere rumor. In some cases, entire sectors of Hive City are effectively processed into rations for the remaining population, a grim testament to the Imperium's efficiency over morality. Penal worlds represent an even more extreme precedent. Planets such as Cadia before its fall, or certain unnamed death worlds, are explicitly designed to break the human spirit. Prisoners are fed minimally and often forced into labor that consumes more energy than they receive in rations. In extreme cases, the bodies of those who perish, whether from exhaustion, disease, or execution, are harvested to feed the remaining prisoners or soldiers. This practice, horrifying as it seems, ensures the survival of a workforce already trapped under the Imperium's control. Even the Emperor's supposed benevolence does not extend to these worlds. Survival is dictated by usefulness, and usefulness can extend all the way to the digestive tract. Beyond the purely practical, ritualistic consumption has precedent as well. Certain hive worlds, steeped in the dogma of the Imperial cult, practice sacrificial rites under the belief that the Emperor demands tribute in blood and flesh. The most notable examples come from worlds heavily influenced by ecclesiarchy oversight, where entire sections of the population may be offered as food for celebratory feasts, religious festivals, or to honor military victories. Codices and lore recount instances of these feasts, describing citizens, often volunteers or prisoners, being prepared in ways that serve both sustenance and ceremony. The line between devotion and horror is blurred. What is an act of faith to some is grotesque cannibalism to others. War zones also provide chilling examples. The Astra Militarum, the Emperor's armies, often operate on the edge of logistical collapse. During sieges, long campaigns, or planet-bound operations, soldiers have been documented resorting to extreme measures for survival. Rations may be supplemented with local human populations, particularly prisoners or captured enemy combatants. While these events are not officially sanctioned, they reveal a broader precedent. When survival of the collective outweighs morality, humans can and will become food. These practices are written into the unofficial, shadowed pages of the Imperium's history, hinting at systemic patterns that repeat across the galaxy. Even the Adeptus Mechanicus, the priests of technology, have documented cases where humans serve as inputs in mechanized systems. On worlds dedicated to bioengineering or nutrient synthesis, the processing of human tissue into rations, chemical inputs, or fuel for voidship systems has occurred. These records, often encoded in arcane tech languages, suggest that the Imperium's approach is not only practical but deeply institutionalized. Humanity itself becomes a consumable resource, not a being with rights or dignity. The common thread in all these historical precedents is the same. The Imperium values survival and efficiency above all else. Compassion, ethics, and morality are luxuries afforded only in propaganda or myths. Life is measured in usefulness, and when usefulness ends, so too may life, but it is rarely wasted. The resources derived from human bodies are reintegrated into the Imperium's machinery, whether as nourishment, fuel, or ceremonial sustenance. Understanding these historical precedents allows us to see a pattern. The Imperium's treatment of humans as food is neither random nor chaotic. It is deliberate, institutionalized, and repeated wherever necessity or dogma demands it. From hive worlds to penal planets, from battlefronts to voidships, human flesh has been treated as another resource in the galaxy's largest and most unfeeling machine. These practices, recorded in fragmentary histories and scattered codices, provide a chilling glimpse into the depths of the Imperium's pragmatism and the scale of horror that humanity endures in the 41st millennium. The history is clear. Humans have been consumed for survival, ritual, and practical utility for centuries. And this grim precedent is only the beginning. Next, we will explore how the Imperium has industrialized this process, how humans are mechanized, processed, and systematized as food in ways that are almost impossible to imagine. In the Imperium, nothing is left to chance. Humanity itself has become part of an unfeeling machine, a resource to be harvested, processed, and redistributed for survival. Across the galaxy, hive worlds, penal planets, and massive void ships have industrialized the process of turning humans into sustenance. The efficiency is horrifying and the logic is unyielding. No resource, no matter how sacred, may go to waste. On densely populated hive worlds, factories extend for miles, consuming entire city blocks in the pursuit of industrial perfection. Humans, born into these sprawling complexes, are tracked from birth. Every birth is recorded, every life measured, every death accounted for. In worlds facing food shortages or overpopulation, administrators identify surplus individuals, often the sick, the elderly, or those deemed unproductive, and incorporate them into the system. Their bodies are no longer seen as people, but as organic material, machines, overseen by Adeptus Mechanicus priests, process these individuals into nutrient rations, the same systems that extract metals, refine chemicals, and produce munitions now process human tissue, converting life into fuel for survival. The scale is staggering. Conveyor belts move humans like livestock, guiding them through complex mechanized systems. Flesh is sterilized, ground, and blended into rations. Bones are crushed for mineral extraction. Organs are processed into concentrated nutrient blocks or used in chemical synthesis. Every part of the human body is cataloged and utilized. It is a gruesome efficiency that mirrors the Imperium itself. Cold, calculated, and utterly without mercy. Voidships, those colossal vessels that carry millions of souls through the stars, take this mechanization to its extreme. On long voyages, traditional food production is impossible. Humans who die aboard these ships are not wasted. Their remains are recycled into the nutrient stores that feed the living crew, providing sustenance for generations. In some cases, entire life support systems are connected to mechanized processing plants that integrate human tissue into hydroponics, rations, or even biofuel for the engines. Life and death are a continuous cycle aboard these ships, and humanity is literally consumed to sustain itself. It is not just a matter of survival. It is bureaucracy, ritualized and normalized. Scribes, commissars, and Adeptus administrative officials meticulously track these processes. Every individual is accounted for in feeding schedules and ration logs. What might seem like chaos to outsiders is, in fact, a rigid system that ensures the maximum output of labor, life, and sustenance. Every death serves a purpose, and every purpose serves the Imperium. Some industrialized worlds take the practice further, integrating ritual with efficiency. Sacrificial chambers and processing facilities are often decorated with imperial iconography, banners, and statues of the emperor, turning each act of consumption into an offering. Humans are fed to other humans under the guise of service to the emperor. It is both practical and spiritual. The living are nourished, the dead honored, or at least used, and the cycle continues uninterrupted. Even the Adeptus Mechanicus, with their obsession with technology, see humanity as a resource to be refined. Biofactories on Mars-adjacent planets and remote forge worlds have documented experiments where human tissue is processed into synthetic nutrients for soldiers, workers, and even spacefaring citizens. In these facilities, humans are reduced to data points, biological inputs, and outputs. Flesh becomes chemical energy, blood fuels reactors, and bones contribute to industrial processes. In essence, humans themselves become part of the Imperium's sprawling machine. What is perhaps most terrifying is the normalization of this process. Citizens of Hive worlds, soldiers on long campaigns, and void ship crews rarely question it. To survive, to obey, and to serve the Emperor is all that matters. The dehumanization is total. The body is reduced to function, the individual to a statistic. Compassion, grief, and moral outrage have no place in the cold calculus of survival. The Imperium is efficient, and humanity is its most versatile raw material. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, mechanized food production is a testament to the Imperium's values. Life is not sacred. Life is measured in utility. Death is not a tragedy. It is an investment. Humanity itself has been industrialized, processed, and consumed to fuel the Imperium's endless expansion. And yet, despite the horror, the system endures, perfectly adapted to the galaxy it inhabits. As we move forward, we will explore how the Imperium merges this industrial efficiency with religious ritual, creating a system where humans are consumed not only for survival, but to satisfy the spiritual demands of the Emperor and the Ecclesiarchy. The line between practicality and devotion blurs, and the result is a galaxy where human flesh serves multiple masters: the living, the dead, and the divine. The Imperium is not merely a machine of industry and bureaucracy. It is also a machine of faith. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, religion is inseparable from governance, and devotion to the God Emperor permeates every aspect of life. Across countless worlds, the ecclesiarchy dictates the spiritual lives of billions, enforcing obedience, worship, and sacrifice. In the most extreme interpretations, human flesh itself becomes a medium of devotion, a tool to honor the Emperor, feed his servants, and maintain the spiritual health of the Imperium. Ritual sacrifice is an ancient practice, predating even the height of the Imperium's expansion. Certain Hive worlds institutionalize it, offering individuals, volunteers, criminals, or those deemed expendable, to be consumed in sacred ceremonies. These rites are framed as acts of divine service. The flesh of the faithful sustains the living, the blood nourishes the planet, and the souls ascend in spirit to the Emperor. To the faithful, there is no horror, only duty, honor, and salvation. Yet to the outsider, the sight is unthinkable. Human bodies prepared with reverence, processed through ceremonial kitchens, and fed to masses as part of a religious feast. The warp further complicates this grim practice. Some sects of the Imperium believe that by consuming human flesh in a ritualized context, they are fortifying themselves against the corruption of chaos. Blood and flesh, offered with devotion, are thought to form a protective barrier, binding the body and soul to the Emperor's light. In some accounts, certain voidships carry ritual chambers where sacrifices are performed during warp travel, ensuring the spiritual stability of the crew as they traverse the perilous currents of the immaterium. Priests, acolytes, and techno-clerics oversee these rituals with meticulous care. From chanting litanies in guttural, ancient tongues to preparing sacrificial meals with precise, almost scientific methodology, the line between religion and industry blurs. In some instances, entire manufacturers operate under dual mandates, processing humans for sustenance while sanctifying the act as devotion. The faithful are fed with flesh that is simultaneously practical and symbolic, each bite reinforcing obedience, piety, and imperatives of survival. Certain chapters of lore provide chilling examples. On the Hive world of Thyra, entire populations were reportedly offered to the Emperor in grand feasts following crop failures. Criminals on Barab 8 were processed into nutrient blocks during religious festivals, framed as necessary offerings to the God Emperor to ensure planetary stability. Even in the most controlled Imperial campaigns, ritual consumption of human tissue is documented as a means to maintain morale, bind soldiers spiritually, and satisfy the spiritual bureaucracy of the Adeptus Mini-Storm. The psychological implications are profound. Humanity, indoctrinated from birth, comes to accept its own consumption as an act of faith. Children grow up believing that becoming sustenance for others is a sacred duty. Criminals embrace it as redemption, and workers accept it as service to the Emperor. In this way, ritualized consumption reinforces Imperium's control. It is not merely physical survival that is ensured, but spiritual obedience as well. The act of consuming human flesh becomes a tool of societal control, binding the population to the machinery of both government and religion. Even the most pragmatic elements of the Imperium, the Administratum, and the Adeptus Mechanicus, do not shy away from ritual sacrifice when it serves both practicality and devotion. Human processing plants may operate under sacred supervision, with every step blessed, every function sanctified, every product framed as an offering. Flesh becomes simultaneously commodity, sustenance, and sacrament. It is in this intertwining of faith and function that the Imperium reaches its most terrifying efficiency. Life and death are no longer purely matters of survival. They are acts of devotion, investment in the machinery of the state, and participation in the cosmic order of the Emperor's will. Consumption is both literal and symbolic, practical and sacred, horrifying yet normalized. In the eyes of the Imperium, there is no contradiction, only necessity and obedience. As we move into the next section, we will explore the psychological and societal effects of the system. We will see how entire generations are conditioned to accept their exploitation, how children are raised to embrace their fate, and how the Imperium ensures that fear, indoctrination, and ritual create a population that will serve, even when that service requires giving one's body as food. The Imperium does not merely consume humans. It shapes them from birth. Individuals are molded to accept a reality that, to outsiders, is nothing short of monstrous. Entire societies are built around obedience, fear, and indoctrination. Humans are conditioned to internalize their own expendability, to view survival, duty, and devotion as synonymous. This is a true horror of the Imperium, the psychological machinery that complements its industrial and ritualized exploitation. On Hive worlds, where millions coexist in tight vertical cities, life is a constant struggle against hunger, disease, and the machinery of bureaucracy itself. Children learn early that failure, weakness, or unproductivity can be fatal. Schools teach obedience above creativity. Education is a tool to instill the Emperor's will. Stories of heroic sacrifice, soldiers falling in battle, criminals offering themselves for the greater good, normalize death and consumption. In these environments, the line between nourishment and survival, faith and horror, becomes blurred. To live is to serve, and to serve may mean becoming food for system. Families, too, are redefined. Traditional bonds are often meaningless in hives where survival is dictated by quotas and efficiency. Parents may disappear under tide collection, leaving children to grow up without guidance, indoctrinated entirely by the state or ecclesiarchy. Ritualized consumption, whether framed as sacrament or necessity, is presented as noble, and generations are taught to embrace it. Children witness it, participate in it symbolically, and internalize it as duty. By the time they reach adulthood, they no longer question the morality of being fed to the system. They accept it as natural. Even in penal worlds, where prisoners live under constant oppression, psychological conditioning reinforces this acceptance. Starvation, overwork, and ritualized fear create a society where death is anticipated and consumption normalized. Prisoners who perish are often processed into sustenance with survivors, a grim cycle that underscores the logic of the Imperium. Life is valuable only in its ability to serve others or the state. In such societies, empathy diminishes, moral reasoning is replaced by survival instinct, and humanity is systematically dehumanized. The psychological effects extend to soldiers and workers as well. Astra Militarum recruits and voidship crews are often conditioned to see human sacrifice as a practical necessity. For them, rationing and consumption of processed human tissue is not horrifying. It is routine, expected, and framed as service to the Emperor. Fear, ritual, and necessity merge to normalize what would otherwise be unthinkable. This conditioning ensures compliance on the battlefield, within manufactorums, and aboard voidships, where survival depends on both obedience and participation in the system. Society itself evolves around these principles. On Hive worlds, entire social classes exist to feed the Imperium's needs. Laborers, administrators, ritual participants, and expendables. Cultural norms reinforce obedience, fear, and the inevitability of death. Humor, art, and religion are all shaped to reinforce the system. Songs glorify sacrifice, literature tells of noble deaths, and festivals celebrate the consumption of humans as devotion. Even grief is systematized, ritualized, and redirected to reinforce obedience. The normalization of consumption has profound consequences for identity. Individuals learn to dissociate from their own mortality, seeing themselves as resources first and humans second. Communities function on utilitarian principles, prioritizing survival and efficiency over compassion. Fear and indoctrination coexist with ritual, creating a population that not only accepts the dehumanization, but participates in it willingly. The Imperium's success relies on the social engineering, a population that can endure horror, obey without question, and sustain itself through obedience and internalized ritual. Ultimately, the psychological and societal effects ensure the Imperium's control is total. Fear, indoctrination, and ritual combine with practical necessity to create a self-perpetuating cycle. Humans produce, obey, and are consumed, while generations grow up believing this is a natural order. Life, death, and consumption are intertwined, and morality is subordinate to survival, faith, and service to the Emperor. This chilling equilibrium prepares the stage for most extreme examples of Imperial horror, worlds where human flesh is consumed on an industrial and ritual scale, void ships where generations live and die in a closed cycle, and penal systems that transform life and death into tools of efficiency. In the next section, we will explore these extreme cases, pushing the boundaries of imagination to reveal the full scope of the Imperium's dehumanizing practices. To understand the Imperium's true scale of horror, one must look to the extremes, worlds and situations where human consumption is not just a matter of practicality or ritual, but fully realized systematic practice. These are the places where the Imperium's logic of survival and devotion intersects with its most brutal mechanisms, creating scenes of suffering and industrialized death that defy comprehension. On certain Hive worlds, overpopulation has reached catastrophic levels. Cities tower hundreds of stories high, stacked with millions of souls packed into every corridor, stairwell, and factory. Resources are insufficient to sustain the population, yet the Imperium does not abandon its citizens. They are too valuable as both labor and sustenance. Entire districts are designated as expendable zones, where the unfit, the ill, or the elderly are systematically harvested. Processed into rations, they feed the remaining population, ensuring that the hive functions without interruption. To the administrators, this is neither cruelty nor sin. It is efficiency in its purest form. Penal worlds amplify this horror further. Prisoners, already stripped of freedom and dignity, are turned into both labor and food. On worlds like Barabate or unnamed death worlds, prisoners are fed minimal rations, forced into exhausting labor, and then processed into nutrient blocks for those who remain alive. Here, human flesh becomes a commodity, a resource to be distributed and consumed. Even death is not wasted. It is measured, recorded, and reintegrated into the system. The psychological impact is immense. Prisoners live and die knowing their body will serve another, internalizing the Imperium's logic as part of survival. Void ships drifting through deep space represent a different but equally horrifying extreme. These vessels carry millions of humans across light years of empty void. Traditional food sources cannot sustain such populations indefinitely, and the Imperium has adapted. Humans who die naturally or are designated for sacrifice are processed by onboard facilities to feed the living. Flesh is converted into nutrient rations, blood into biofuel, and organs into chemical inputs for life support systems. Generations live and die within these closed cycles, often unaware that the very bodies of their predecessors sustain them. Life and death merge into an endless loop, and humanity becomes its own sustenance. In some of the more ritualized examples, the Imperium's religious hierarchy intertwines horror with devotion. Hive worlds under strict ecclesiarchy control may stage massive sacrificial feasts, where human flesh is consumed under the guise of service to the Emperor. Criminals, prisoners, or volunteers are prepared ceremonially, their deaths sanctified, their bodies transformed into sustenance for the faithful. The spectacle reinforces obedience, worship, and societal control. To participate is to show devotion. To resist is heresy. In these worlds, horror becomes normalized, even celebrated. Historical accounts also reveal instances during wartime where human flesh was used to sustain imperial forces in extreme conditions. During prolonged sieges or campaigns where supply lines failed, soldiers resorted to consuming the bodies of the fallen, prisoners, or even civilians to survive. While these cases were not always officially sanctioned, they reflect the Imperium's underlying philosophy. Practicality outweighs morality, and survival justifies even the most unimaginable acts. What binds all these extremes together is the same principle that defines the Imperium itself: efficiency, obedience, and devotion. Humans are reduced to tools, laborers, soldiers, nutrients, and every death is absorbed back into the system. The scale is almost incomprehensible. Millions, sometimes billions, of lives are processed to sustain billions more, while the machinery of the Imperium churns forward. Compassion and individuality are erased, replaced by a singular logic. Sir the Emperor, survive if possible and accept your role, even if it means becoming sustenance. These extreme cases also illustrate a chilling truth. The Imperium's horrors are not anomalies. They are systemic, repeating across worlds, campaigns, and voidships. From hive cities teetering on collapse to penal worlds designed to break spirits. From voidships recycling generations to sacred feasts glorifying death, humanity is constantly caught between survival and consumption. The galaxy itself becomes a stage of this grim cycle, and the Imperium ensures that the machinery never stops. As we reach the final segment, we will reflect on the cumulative horror of all these practices, summarizing the Imperium's dehumanizing machinery and its philosophical, practical, and spiritual justifications. We will confront the ultimate conclusion. In the 41st millennium, life is never sacred, and humans are often consumed, not as enemies, not as collateral, but as tools, sustenance, and offerings, ensuring the survival of the machine above all else.